Check for all included parts and hardware before starting installation. We recommend using a high-quality Allen bit for installing our button head bolts. This will dramatically prevent the chances of stripping the heads. We also strongly discourage the use of impact tools. Uninstall OEM skid plates using a 12mm socket. Locate the engine crossmember. Here you will mount the engine skid plate mounting bracket using the supplied mounting bracket nut plates. You will use 2 bolts and 2 washers. Locate the threaded holes on the crossmember in front of the radiator. Grab 3 bolts and 3 washers and thread them just enough to support the weight of the front skid, and then slide the front skid into place. The vehicle in the install video had a couple of pre-existing bolts from a winch mount. You will likely not have these, and that's okay. Mount the rear portion to the mounting bracket using 2 bolts and 2 washers. Mount the front of the engine skid to the mounting bracket using 2 bolts and 2 washers. It is recommended to leave a small gap between the front skid and engine skid to prevent any rubbing. At the rear of the engine skid, you will place the spacer plate on top and secure using 2 bolts and 2 washers. If you are installing a transmission skid plate, you will leave these bolts loose and move on to the transmission skid portion of the video. Otherwise, you may go through and double check that all bolts have been tightened down. Remember to recheck bolts for tightness at 100 miles, 500 miles, and periodically thereafter. To get started on the transmission skid plate, first you'll want to remove the OEM transfer case skid plate. The transmission skid plate slides into place between the rear engine skid plate and spacer plate as shown here. Place the nut plate inside the crossmember as shown, and secure the rear of the transmission skid plate using 4 bolts and 4 washers. Leave these bolts loose if you are also installing the transfer case skid plate. Otherwise, you can stop here and double check that all bolts have been tightened down. Locate the U-shaped flanges on the frame rails. They are located just behind the transfer case crossmember. This is where you'll mount the transfer case brackets. Each bracket is mounted using 2 bolts, 2 nuts, and 4 washers. Tighten the bolts down to secure the brackets to the frame, but leave them just loose enough to allow for adjustments. Mount the crossmember brace using 8 25mm bolts and 8 M8 washers. Slide the transfer case skid plate between the frame and transmission plate, aligning with pre-installed bolts, and mount the rear of the skid plate to the brace using 3 bolts and 3 washers. Now that you have completed installation, start from the front and work your way back, checking that all bolts have been tightened down. And also, don't forget to check for tightness at 100 miles, 500 miles, and periodically thereafter. We hope that you enjoy your new Talons Garage skid plate. Feel free to mention us on your favorite social media platform or forum. We love to see our products out in the wild.